Facebook's David Marcus was peppered with questions about the social network's newly proposed cryptocurrency, Libra. But there was one question, or more accurately, a statement, that seemed to catch him completely off guard. Take a listen.
Now, we're told by some that innovation is always good. The most innovative thing that happened this century is when Osama bin Laden came up with the innovative idea of flying 2 airplanes into towers. That's the most consequential innovation, although this may do more to endanger America than even that.
That was Representative Brad Sherman of California's 30th District, who joins us now from Washington. Representative, thank you so much for joining us. So certainly a very provocative statement we heard you make there. What exactly did you mean?
Let me clarify. Look, Zuckerberg is not as evil as Osama bin Laden, because the harm that Zuckerberg will do is a mere unintended byproduct of his effort to make hundreds of billions of dollars more. But the fact is, in creating a tool for drug dealers, that's going to result in deaths on the streets of America every day. By creating a tool for tax evaders, that's going to mean that the federal government can't fund cancer research or can't fund the defense of the United States to the degree that we'd like to. And by providing a method for sanctions evaders, we're going to make it much more difficult for the federal government to prevent Iran and North Korea from developing nuclear weapons. Now, Zuckerberg doesn't intend any of those objectives. He's just intentionally disinterested in whether that occurs. The fact is that the power of the dollar, our ability to control our banking system, is a key to the economy of the United States, which saves at least $100 billion a year in borrowing costs because we're the reserve currency of the world. It is key to our sanctions program, which is most effective when we control dollar transactions. It's effective in our efforts to prevent drug kingpins and human traffickers. And the intent of this Libra, which is Zuckerman's baby, I call it a Zuck buck, the intention there is to undermine that whole effort. And I know that Zuckerman is under attack because he undermines American privacy. His response is to become a privacy advocate for tax evaders, terrorists, sanctions evaders, drug dealers. And I think those are the folks who shouldn't have financial privacy.
Okay, we'll get there. Before we go, though, on the 9/11 statement, obviously you got our attention. Some Americans might have been offended. Some might have thought it was a bridge too far. What's your reaction to that?
The number of deaths that will occur in America, if this is successful in playing the role that's intended, will exceed what we lost on 9/11. The additional heroin deaths, the inability to fund cancer research, the lack of success of our sanctions will be very important. But they won't be all of a sudden. It won't be a one big picture, won't be one big day. But I had to be asked by a reporter, does that make Zuckerberg as evil as Osama bin Laden? Clearly not. Bin Laden was trying to cause American deaths. Zuckerberg is just disinterested in whether they occur.
So, speaking of Zuckbucks, as you call it, you've asked Mark Zuckerberg to testify, or you've said you would like Mark Zuckerberg to testify. What do you want to hear from him that you didn't hear from David Marcus?
We're getting a confused and contradictory report from Marcus. He's telling us that they're going to abide by all the anti-money laundering and know your customer rules that we impose on our banks. But then he's saying that there will be others who create separate wallets that will be formed in other countries, and one wonders whether a company creating a wallet in Minsk, Moscow, or Tehran is going to follow the anti-money laundering rules. So Marcus makes a promise and then paints a picture in which Facebook would be incapable of carrying out that promise. Likewise, Marcus promises that there will be no printing of additional money, that they will have a one-to-one reserve. But he then describes a system for governing the Libra or the Zuck buck in which Facebook won't be in control. So who knows what they will choose to do. So we need to iron this out. When we get contradictory information from the employee, we need to hear from the CEO.
So what do you think Congress's role should be here versus Facebook and Zuckerberg himself? What should the government be doing?
We should be prohibiting cryptocurrencies. They disempower the federal government. And there is an anarchist strain, a libertarian strain that says every time the federal government is disempowered, Americans should be happier. But it's funny, I've got Republican colleagues who want America to be strong and the U.S. government to be weak. And that doesn't actually work.
So
it feels
are you
good,
saying you
but
think
it doesn't work.
cryptocurrency should be illegal?
Absolutely. I've advocated that for a long time.
All right,
And think of it. The purpose of cryptocurrency, it serves no function unless somebody's engaged in nefarious transactions. That's why 46% of the Bitcoin transactions are for people who are doing things illegal under U.S. law, according to an academic peer-reviewed study. That's whether they're evading sanctions, evading tax laws, or dealing drugs. So we already know, and Bitcoin is a small baby here. You can't buy a pack of gum for a Bitcoin. It has to have an off-ramp that you can then convert it into a sovereign currency. This proposal solves that problem and will allow drug dealers to go seamlessly from drug deals to money they can spend on luxuries. This is a chance to liberate those who hate federal laws, whether they be anti-drug laws or anti-drug human trafficking laws, tax laws, or our sanctions regime. This is a chance for them to get around the most effective controls that we have, and that's why it's popular.
So Facebook's crypto issue is just one of many issues that Facebook is dealing with, along with fake news, misinformation, election hacking on the platform by foreign countries. Do you think Facebook should be broken up?
I think, first and foremost, Facebook has to be kept out of the cryptocurrency business. They say they want to provide services to the unbanked. The place where we have the most unbanked is India, and if they did this system using U.S. dollars or using the local currency in India, they could be successful. They could help people. But by going to cryptocurrency, they're prohibited from doing business in India. Zuckerberg doesn't want to help poor, unbanked people in India. He wants to make huge amounts of money and create a circumstance where he can do the one thing he can't do now, and that's print his own money. You know, the U.S. government used to have a 1-to-1 reserve gold for the dollar. We got away from that over the last century and a half. And if Zuckerberg can do the same thing, he can do what really only the U.S. federal government can do to the extent that we do it, and that is print money. And so he's got what seems to be all the money in the world, but he wants to print more.
Now, what about the broader argument about big tech in general, that big tech is too big? Elizabeth Warren is calling for the breakup of not just Facebook, but Apple, Amazon, Google. Do you agree with her?
I'm on the Financial Services Committee. I focus on the financial system. And these other antitrust issues, I think Elizabeth Warren has some good arguments, but I come onto this show to talk to you about things that I've really thought through and can add something to the discussion. And cryptocurrencies serve no purpose that cannot be met by the U.S. dollar except for drug dealers, human traffickers, tax evaders, and sanctions evaders.
All right, message received. Congressman Brad Sherman, thank you so much for joining us. Congressman Sherman, good to have you. Coming up, customers hitting pause on Netflix.